people. Ladies and gentlemen, let me emphasize that the world community cannot look away when millions of Kashmiris face the threat of extermination through genocidal acts of Indian occupation troops. It is not me, the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, making this assertion. Rather, independent observers like Genocide Watch have issued alerts. Distinguished guests, India's denial of the Kashmiris to right to self-determination is an affront to the international community. It is the will of the international community that is represented through the numerous UN Security Council resolutions on Jammu and Kashmir dispute. It is that very will that India continues to disobey. India's human rights violations in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir challenge the collective conscience of mankind. India cannot pretend that what happens in this internationally recognized disputed territory is an internal matter. Let me acknowledge that the world community has responded to the humanitarian crisis in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Condemnation by multilateral and human rights organizations, international media, civil society, and parliaments around the globe is a testimony to both the currency and the urgency of Jammu and Kashmir dispute. Though significant, the response is, however, not enough. Not enough because no response can be enough till India is held fully accountable for its serious crimes against the Kashmiri people, until the realization of the Kashmiris' legitimate right to self-determination. Ladies and gentlemen, I therefore once again call upon the international community to hold India accountable and demand that India undertakes these steps. Immediately lift the continuing military siege and rescind illegal and inhuman actions taken in IIOJK. Remove restrictions on communications, movement, and peaceful assembly. Immediately release the incarcerated Kashmiri political leaders and allow them to express their wishes of the Kashmiri people. Free arbitrarily and illegally detained Kashmiris. Reverse the new domicile rules designed to change the demographic structure of the Indian-occupied Kashmir and cancel all fake domicile granted to non-Kashmiris. Remove the draconian laws granting impunity to Indian occupation forces. Allow access for United Nations observers, international human rights and humanitarian organizations, and the international media to Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Immediately halt its ceasefire violations across the line of control and the working boundary. Stop sponsoring terrorism against the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and fulfill its obligation of holding a free and impartial plebiscite under the auspices of the United Nations to let the Kashmiris exercise their inalienable right to self-determination as enshrined in numerous Security Council resolutions. Ladies and gentlemen, I would conclude my remarks with the words of the Nobel laureate Elie Wiesel. He said, and I quote, "We must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the terminator, never the tormentor, never the tormented. Now is the time to take sides. On this Kashmir Solidarity Day, let us vow to help the oppressed and not the oppressor. Let us promise to encourage the tormented and not the tormentor. And let us decide with the innocent people of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and not their brutal occupier. I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to invite the chief guest, His Excellency Dr. Arif Alvi, the President, Islamic Republic of Pakistan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I need to pick this up then. Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mahdum Shah Mahmud Qureshi Sahab, Chair Kashmir Committee, Shahryar Afridi Sahab, Director Institute of Strategic Studies, Azaz Sahab, SAPM Mohid Yusuf Sahab, Mr. Qureshi, Mishal Malik Sahiba, Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. It is an honor for me to welcome you to the President's House to be part of this special event to mark the Kashmir Solidarity Day. It has been 73 years and you've heard a number of speakers as well as a presentation on what has been happening in Kashmir. We gather here to commemorate the huge sacrifices which have been made by the Kashmiri people, but at the same time, to let the world know, let the world not forget what has been happening there, what is happening there, and what were the promises made to the Kashmiri people. It has been a long struggle, not only since illegal Indian occupation of Jammu and Kashmir, but even before, against the Dogra Raj which the Kashmiri people have gone through, when their Kashmir was sold for 7.5 million rupees to the Dogra ruler by the British. It's a sore spot which has been there for more than a century, and the people of Kashmir has borne the brunt of rule of brutalities against them, and that sadly continues today, and it's Pakistan's responsibility along with that to support, along with the struggle of the Kashmiri people, to support that and support them, and to make the world, remind the world that they should not forget what has been promised to them. And what my Prime Minister, Mr. Imran Khan, spoke in the General Assembly, that it was the United Nations which had promised plebiscite and fairness and justice to the people of Kashmir. So therefore, the responsibility therefore comes to the international community. It is for Pakistan because they are Kashmiri brethren. Sometimes the world believes and thinks, which is not true, that it is a matter of real estate. No, it is a matter of hearts and souls. It is a matter of human bodies. It is a matter of human minds. It is the matter of the women and children. It is the matter of people living under atrocities and under aggression for such a long time. There have been numerous United Nations resolutions in this regard. And in coming here, I wanted to look at some of them, and I made a note that the first resolution was the UN resolution 38, then 39, and then 47, which ensured that there must be a democratic, impartial plebiscite as a right for the people of Kashmir to decide where they want to go. And it was reaffirmed in the resolution number 51, and then resolutions 80, 91, I go on, and 96. India accepts all resolutions and plebiscite, and so do all the nations of the United Nations. Then resolution 98, then 122, reaffirmed the resolutions previously passed, that the Kashmir, and then 123 and 126, that the International Committee of Nations reaffirmed their promise to the Kashmiri people. Had we not believed in the United Nations, ladies and gentlemen, Kashmir was liberated. Had the ceasefire not taken place, had Jawaharlal Nehru not run to the United Nations looking for a ceasefire, the Kashmiri people were liberating themselves. And Pakistan, believing in the United Nations, believing in the Committee of Nations, a number of few ambassadors represent that community, believing in the world, and the United Nations was in its infancy, and there was tremendous hope. So Pakistan agreed to the ceasefire, and therefore it has India since then has gradually moved away from its commitments to the international community, and to suppress the people of Kashmir, it has resorted to brutality, it has resorted to pellet guns. Some of the images you saw, something which is not used by any country in the world, and by India also only in Kashmir. I remember in the years 2013, 14 and 15, when I was a member of the National Assembly, I had challenged India that it will never, I had made a claim that it will never use that in any other region except in Kashmir, because it knows that the Kashmiris are not with them. Imagine the fact that after August the 5th in 2019, when it changed its own articles of 370 and 35A, wherein it promised the Kashmiri people at the time in 1947, 48 and 49, it promised the Kashmiri people that we will ensure the fact that your population is not going to be changed, your property ownerships will remain as you want it to be, and it in 2019 it changed that. What has happened since then? The Kashmir always had a bigger proportion, as the biggest proportion of or ratio of population to security forces, and instead what it was promised that the coffers of capital would flow in, there will be tremendous peace. India had to increase the number of security forces to 900,000. Imagine a population of 8 million Kashmiris has almost 1 million security forces. So there's one security force person with a gun standing there on 8 Kashmiris. That includes women, children, old people, and everybody. So that is because the Kashmiris are resisting Indian occupation, not because of any other reason, but the fact that they wanted a different position of Kashmir with Pakistan, which was promised to them, which they hoped as the division of India was taking place, according to a principle that the majority areas would go towards Pakistan, and therefore that principle was not implemented there. The new change of demographics, my foreign minister has mentioned that fact, it is like an apartheid which is being created. The new change in demographics, imagine an 8 million population, but the new domiciles which have been issued are close to 1.5 million. So 8 million population today is already being challenged with new domiciles being given, as Mashal Malik talked about, domiciles being given to the loyalists of Hindutva who intend to migrate to change the demography of Kashmir. And we must stop that from happening. And who will stop them? If Pakistan has promised itself and promised to the Kashmiri people that we stand with them on political, moral and diplomatic levels. We continue to pursue that course in the legal framework which the world should understand. There's a peaceful struggle. Pakistan is talking about peace, as the commitment made by the Prime Minister as soon as he came into government. He promised that if you take one step forward, we'll take 2 steps in the same direction. That did not happen. India, in fact, and it has been revealed lately, India, in fact, after Pulwama, which was probably self-created, after Pulwama, India did aggression against Pakistan, and it has come to our knowledge throughout the world that it was that attack. Imagine that attack happened because it was interested in getting a bigger share of the Indian vote. A risk which has been taken attacking across international borders. I believe today that the world should understand that India is a very irresponsible nuclear state. India did its first blast in 1974, Pakistan did not. India blasted nuclear weapons, as it tested nuclear weapons in 1999, and when Pakistan thought that it has to expose its hand also, Pakistan went ahead. India came so close in triggering what some of my friends have spoken about, the possibility of a limited nuclear war. It's an irresponsible situation right now. A belligerent state who can go across for election reasons, go across and attack Pakistan, blaming Pakistan for something which Pakistan never did. Probably they had their own fake encounter, dirty hands in it, and then it attacked Pakistan. So I believe the world should realize it's a belligerent state, it's an irresponsible state, and therefore it is the responsibility of the world to expose what is happening. India undid the special status, and as our foreign minister demanded today, it has to undo whatever it has done. It has to move towards plebiscite. That is the only solution, will remain the only solution of Kashmir. There can be no other solution of Kashmir, and I insist, and Pakistan insists on those lines. Let me insist that I am grateful to the United Nations Secretary General for having talked about this, for having pushed even the statement which came out yesterday. It reminded India that India and Pakistan must come to a peaceful resolution in these areas. Let me remind you, ladies and gentlemen, particularly from the diplomatic corps here, because this message primarily we want for the world to understand. We are requesting you to let your governments know that it is an important area. In fact, whatever is happening in India, Pakistan has learned from the past. Whatever is happening in India, they want to rewrite history. They are working against their own minorities. They are creating a schism within India itself. It wants to rewrite history, and it is not pleasing for us, because Pakistan knows that if in one border, for example, on our western border, when there is an uncertainty, it affects Pakistan. It affects Pakistan's rise towards economic prosperity. It affects Pakistan's struggle in poverty alleviation. It affects Pakistan's struggles in health and education. While India is dividing its own country, is working against minorities. The Hindutva regime is there, very strongly there, and the Prime Minister of Pakistan, and in fact our Foreign Minister, and all of us have called to the world that these are makings of a genocide. When you start rewriting history, when you start isolating communities, when there are riots which then reduce the efficacy of the minority population in India. So I must thank the United Nations Secretary General, and I must remind you, ladies and gentlemen, of the UNHCR's report in 2018, which listed for the first time in great detail what the atrocities being committed in India, in Kashmir, against the people, against innocent civilians. What we want, ladies and gentlemen, is that the media should also continue playing its role. India has closed Kashmir. In Pakistan, you can go to our side of Kashmir, the Azad Kashmir, which we call, freely. All diplomats, in fact, the Pakistan government during the last year made those arrangements, but India does not allow visits of foreign delegations. It does not allow the media to go in. It has curbed its own Wi-Fi situation, reduced the bandwidth for people. They cannot inform, they cannot send messages out. That can only happen even after 73 years, when the population of Kashmir has never been satisfied with Indian occupation. India could have made lives easier. Then the wishes of plebiscite is the wish of the Kashmiri population. It's not the wishes of Pakistan, and the plebiscite had recognized that. So, ladies and gentlemen, while things are getting worse, let me give hope. Let me say today, in response to what Mishal Malik Sahiba mentioned, which Shah Sahib, our foreign minister, mentioned, both of them used two words which I think I would like to comment on that there may be extermination or extinction of the Kashmiri people. And in that, I would like to quote a Czech-born French novelist, Milan Kundera, and he writes in his novel, Laughter in book, Laughter and Happiness, and he writes that the first step in liquidating a people is to erase its memory. The first step to erase its memory. This a new history. Before long, the nation we will not let the world forget about Kashmir. We will fight for them in all diplomatic, political. The past is never dead in the diplomatic, political, and moral ways, and we will expose what is being done. The past is never dead, and I would like to give a message to the Kashmiri youth and the Kashmiri people that Pakistan stands with you. Pakistan stands with you and assures you that your liberty is not far away. It is close. It is within your grasp. Have faith and continue your struggles. You have sacrificed tremendously, and Pakistan is there with you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will not allow the world to forget. Thank you very much.